Good afternoon and welcome to our latest Posturite webinar on, I can't believe it, the 1st of July. We're delighted today to have a very experienced speaker, Sarah Piddington. And Sarah runs her own consultancy called Sarah Piddington Consulting. And she is passionate about health and safety and well-being. And she's going to be talking to us today about the future is well-being, health and safety. Now, there's just a few things I want to say beforehand. We will be recording this webinar, so if you have any technical problems, you'll always be able to go to our website and review this webinar afterwards. Please also, if you have any questions, use the drop-down box on the right-hand side of your screen and type in your questions, and I'll be putting as many of them as I can after Sarah has presented her webinar this morning. So really, without further ado, Sarah, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar. So today's talk is about well-being and health and safety, and I'll explain why I put well-being first as we go along. The reason I put this presentation together is that over 14 years of working in the health and safety field, I've become acutely aware of the fact that a lot of us are mainly focused as safety practitioners. Health does definitely get a look in, but we also need to recognise how well-being can impact that. The other thing I've recognised is that gone are the days where, you know, HR didn't used to have a seat on the board. HR now have a seat on the board. Health and safety are getting to the point where we now actually have the seat on board of directors in large organisations. And as health and safety and occupational health practitioners or ergonomists or in any of the above, we can have a real direct impact on the profitability and the success of our organisations. So this is what I'm going to take you through. So as H&S and health professionals, I like to consider how we are really seen by people. These bonkers conkers stories, you know, making kids wear safety goggles before they can play with conkers in the backyard, these signs on hot drinks saying, warning, this drink may be hot. We actually control the perception people have of us, and the future is ours to create. If we want to make ourselves have more of an impact in the workforce, we can do that. We can meet the messages we send out to make sure that people see us as being very engaging and solutions focused. So 20th century, it had to be about safety. There was a lot of heavy manufacturing, people were falling into machines, they were getting arms chopped off, and children were working in factories and getting killed. So it had to be about safety back in the 20th century. We started to talk about health, but it's never really been engaged with. People used to scream about safety, but whisper about health. The 21st century, we're killing fewer people than we've ever killed before. Now we're hearing about stress, we're hearing about mental health issues, people burning out. Organisations talk about the fact that they've got so many people off on long-term sickness or off on stress, and that it's impacting staff turnover. And the photo in the bottom right corner there, how many of us lay in bed and the last thing they do before they go to sleep is check their phone? First thing you do in the morning is check your phone. Now, these are meant to be called smartphones. That anything that keeps us on 24 hours a day is a stupid phone, in my opinion. All of this stuff is the well-being side. So that takes us through to what I call a well-being, health and safety cycle. So well-being, and I mean well-being as in the entirety of the person, how they're sleeping, what they're eating, what their hydration levels are like, what their stress levels are like. People with better well-being typically have better quality health. They're not presenting with serious health issues quite so often. If you're getting better sleep, if you've got reduced stress levels, that directly impacts your gastroenterological system, and you'll find that people who have health problems and issues with stress quite often have tummy upsets, etc. And healthier people are safer. I work a lot in aviation safety, and I work a lot in policing, and I work a lot in rail. People who are well slept don't crash trains or planes as frequently. People who have had good quality of sleep, etc., don't have as many accidents on construction sites or whatever field it is in. Health definitely impacts safety. And all of this directly impacts the bottom line. So well-being, health and safety impacts profitability. I think we've had it backwards all of these years. So this is why I have well-being, then health, then safety. So the concept I like to introduce people to now is thinking of well-being, health and safety. And my vision is for a new breed of leaders who make well-being, health and safety an inspiring conduit to the well-being and success of an organisation. And the formula I came up with is about integrating leadership with well-being, health and safety in an authentic, compassionate and inspired way, establishing a new model of what it means to lead people. And to me, that basically says in summary, as well-being, health and safety people, what we do can really affect the well-being and success of our companies. And we as people who are doing wellbeing, health and safety are leaders, whether we see ourselves as leaders or not, we are, and we can inspire people and help establish this new model, and really making the more we are seen as leaders, the more impact we're going to have in our organisations. And the work that we're doing, you might be looking at how someone's sitting at their desk. You might be doing a risk assessment at a smelting plant. You might be going in and having a look at a piece of equipment in a factory. Everything we do in terms of wellbeing, health and safety impacts our individuals. That by extension impacts the organisations. The happier and safer people are at work, the better society is, and that really does have far-reaching impacts through to the world. So this is a big thing that we're actually undertaking in our roles. The link between well-being is amazing. So the link between well-being of an organisation and that of its employees is fantastic. If you have a happy, healthy workforce, the benefits are immense. Decreased staff turnover impacts profitability. Decreased staff sickness impacts profitability. Increased attendance, increased productivity whilst people are at work. This all has a direct impact on the bottom line. So when I go into an organisation, I assist my clients, because what we're actually doing is facilitating organisational change, getting your managers and your CEOs and MDs to recognise that the decisions we make as health and safety people and occupational health people impact their bottom line is a massive thing. It's also about educating and inspiring leaders and positively impacting profitability. And I'll take you through that profitability impact in a moment. So, inputs. In terms of our roles, wellbeing, health and safety people and occupational health people really do touch a lot of different areas of an organisation. Health and safety, occupational health, wellbeing and staff welfare, naturally we would have an impact on those areas. We also have an impact on business insurances, because business insurances go up if accidents increase. Engineering insurances go up if we're not maintaining plant properly and it ends up with an accident on a piece of plant. Mechanical, electrical and maintenance, if plant preventative maintenance isn't being done correctly, that impacts the business. And one of the things we do when we go around doing site inspections is making sure that PPMs are being done and making sure that we're having lift inspections and things like that. Systems, management information and IT. Many of you will have health and safety database systems. That might be an online DSE assessment system. You may have a Posturite system work right in place, which does that all for you. You may have an access database which tracks your accidents and incidents and near misses. So there's direct impacts from systems management on wellbeing, health and safety. HR and EDI. The amount of times I have a HR person come and say to me, hey, I've got a person who is having an issue with they've got a sickness and we don't know what to do about rehabilitating them to work. We have direct impact with HR. Definitely the same with EDI. And then we look at procurement and supply chain. So if there's a new contract coming in and we have to actually assess the competence of the contractors, we get involved in that process. And then of course there's organisational effectiveness and business change. So it really is, wellbeing, health and safety really does have wide impacts on an organisation. So just as a bit of a challenge for each of you, Here's some key measurements you can actually take to work out where you are. Sickness absence figures. Now, this must include long-term sick, because every time someone goes off sick, it costs the organisation money. So I recommend finding out what the rough day cost is for each of your levels of management, and you might split it into 5 or 6 levels of management and work out what that costs you for every single day a person's off. Equate that to an annual figure. Accident and incident figures, the same thing. Every time someone has an accident or incident, take into account what it costs you in terms of increased insurance premiums, or it might just be the excess you have to pay for each incident, how long it takes you as a health and safety person to investigate, how long it takes in management time, what it costs for lost time for the person that's been injured, how long it took you to report to RID, or if you had to report that to the HSE and things like that. Staff turnover figures. Staff turnover figures are a major thing, because every time you lose someone from your team, it costs you money. It then costs more money for the HR team to recruit. It takes management time for supervising and doing interviews. Staff turnover really does cost organisations a massive amount of money. So recruitment costs, management time, external agency fees, all of those things, and public liability insurance costs. Really, what does your PL insurance cost you a year, and how could you be minimising those costs? And that might be to do with general safety practitioner work and looking at slips, trips and falls and things like that. It could also be in terms of, have you had someone go off and claim against the organisation for stress? So have a look at those figures as well, because I can tell you now they're probably higher than you expect them to be. And if you can work these things out into a monetary figure, work a little bit with your HR director or your HR manager, and actually sit there and say, hey, we need to work out how much this genuinely costs, because you can then take that to your senior executive board and show them what it's costing costing them to not have it right. And then you've got a trump card in your hand to say, hey, hang on a second, you need to pay more attention to this, because this is what it's costing us to have this wrong, and I can help you fix that. And all of that can help to empower you as a health and safety person or an occupational health person to make a bigger impact within your organisation. And I think one of the main things I've noticed from 13 years of doing this role in the UK is that people tend to see health and safety people as being, they're going to stand around and have a clipboard and they're going to be marking things off on an audit sheet. And fair enough, there is an element of our jobs that covers. But we can also be there to lead, to inspire. We're very lucky. We have this job that we have to see, or we can be involved with the MD and the CEO and other C-suite people, or we can be talking to a contract cleaner whose third language might be English. We have the ability in our roles to be inspiring leaders, and I think it's really, really important for people to understand just how integral our jobs are to the success of an organisation. Now, I've only listed 5 areas there for you to go and take some key measurements. I could easily have given you 15. So if anyone wants more information on that, I'm very happy to provide information on that. But the main messages I want you to take away here are understanding that the more we look after people's well-being, the better their health will be, the better their safety will be, and the impact that has on the bottom line, could be potentially we're talking in 6 figures, 7 figures, and imagine if you had some of that money that you were saving the organisation going to allow you to do things like wellbeing roadshows and get people to actually realise that your organisation cares about them. Because let's face it, when someone leaves your organisation, they're not leaving because they think they're going to a worse employer. They're leaving because they think they're going to a better employer. And quite often you can track that back to how the company makes them feel, and that's where the well-being comes into it. So I like the concept. I'm actually writing a book at the moment. Its title is Profitability Through Wellbeing. And really the impact you can all have in your organisations is major. This is a role that we should be going, yep, this is a fantastic role. I love coming to work every day because I can have such a major impact. And each of you can have that major impact. So I was hoping to be able to finish at about the 15-minute mark so we can go on to questions. My contact details are on there if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me or look up my website. But apart from that, Catherine's going to shoot me over some questions now. So I've got about 15 minutes or so to do a bit of Q&A.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great. Good, inspiring talk for a Friday. We haven't got too many questions yet, but I know what these things are like. They tend to come snowballing in. So can I start, though, with one that's come through? Just to ask you, what's the best way to engage leadership? Because sometimes we want to do so, you go there and actually they don't want, they just appear not to want to engage with you. Can we have some thoughts for you on that?
Yeah, sure. Excellent question. So in my experience, when, I've been fairly fortunate in the fact that all of the organisations I've worked in, I've reported to someone with sufficient seniority that has a voice within the organisation. I find that person, whether it could be a head of facilities, it might be the head of HR, it might be a HR manager, it may be another health and safety. You may have a health and safety director and you're a health and safety advisor who works for that person. Sitting and engaging with them and saying, hey, can I please grab an hour of your time, in the next week? There's a few areas that I've been looking at that I think we can coordinate together to make an impact on the organisation, and I'd like to take you through 3 or 4 slides and set up 5 or 6 benchmarks for staff turnover, sickness, absence, etc. And I find when people go in with facts and say, I've spoken to HR, this is what staff turnover is costing us. We've reviewed some of our leavers, our leaving interview paperwork, and a lot of it comes back to staff training and staff induction. If you can go to your management and say, I have ways that we can make this better and save us money, the reticence for management to actually engage tends to fall by the wayside when, you turn around and say to any director, I ask 2 questions. 1, do you want to make more money? 2, do you want to look after your people better? And I've never had anyone not say yes to both.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. That's really helpful. This is quite a tricky one that's come through. How would you suggest occupational health professionals engage in promoting well-being when the professional is not an employee but a contractor who's only expected to do health surveillance and sickness absence reviews? There you go, working one hand behind your back. That's an interesting question for you.
Yes. Okay, so in that regard, you're not going to be able to get out any, normally road shows and things like that are fantastic, but as a contractor, it's much more difficult to impact the organisation you're working in if you don't strictly have decision-making privileges. So in that case, I would probably do something like a 1-page, almost like an alert, almost like a this is one way, or this is a road show. This is something I've noticed that is a trend in your organisation. And if we were to put this information out to your, and say, I'm a contractor, but I can help you put this together. If we were to put this information out through the organisation, I believe it would have this impact. And whether that be a monetary impact, whether it be I'm an occupational health person, I've seen that we're starting to have a problem with stress, or we're starting to have a problem with musculoskeletal disorders due to these, the chairs in the new office or whatever it is. Here is a solution I have to offer. Would you consider putting this out to all of your staff?
Yeah, I think it is difficult, as you quite rightly say. There are some ways in, aren't there?
Definitely.
Another interesting area here, sustainability. Hot business topic. Do you feel that sustainability is also an area in which we can have a positive influence?
Yes, so just to clarify, I'm not 100% sure if you're talking about sustainability as in environmental sustainability, or if you're talking sustainability as in us having an impact on making a business generally sustainable. If it was in relation to environmental sustainability, yes. I'm actually a health safety, wellbeing, health safety and environmental professional, and registered with IEMA and everything. But sustainability is definitely somewhere those of us who are environmentally qualified can have an impact, and it naturally lends itself to blending in with health and safety. So when the new ISO 45001 comes out, and that's of course a very blended standard, that will help. But in the meantime, 14,001 and things like that, it all kind of goes in hand: health, safety, well-being, environmental, corporate responsibility, and sustainability. So yes, we can definitely have that. If your organisation doesn't have a sustainability policy, the first thing you could do would be to suggest a suitable one with baby steps for environmental targets within it. So I'm going to just assume that that was in relation to environmental, unless the person who asked the question wants to put a clarification in there for me.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out and see if there's a clarification.
Great,
In the
thanks.
meantime, a little bit more nuts and bolts. What type of things do you recommend to improve staff wellbeing? A few basics.
Oh wow. Okay. So I actually just did a well-being launch for one of my clients who had never really done, in inverted commas, well-being before, and I started from the basic level. One of the excellent things is, of course, having an employee assistance program. Having an employee assistance program that's available 24/7 for employees and their families. Sometimes they're available to contractors as well. Having an EAP is great. If you've already got an EAP, get the reports from the EAP to show whether people are off with stress, show whether people are off with what kind of long-term sicknesses they're off with. You can find that out from HR. But you can find what people are calling about. Is it something to do with stress? Is it something to do with line management? Is there an issue with line managers? Is it a management thing? That is a great way of finding out where you're actually at, and then you can launch wellbeing campaigns in response. So one of the training packages I've just recently put together when I actually launched a wellbeing program went through everything from the fact that, we're going to demonstrate our commitment to you. We have a corporate health and safety program. We have an employee assistance program. I introduced training on line management, stress awareness training, which was fantastic. So every single person in the organisation that had line management responsibilities received training on things like how to spot signs and symptoms of stress in your people and yourself, how to deal with that as a manager, how to build resilience. And the building resilience training went to everyone in the organisation. So everyone got a take-home pack that they could either read in the office, they could take it home, they could give it to their loved ones at home. I had a couple of girls say, come back and say, we gave it to our kids at home who were studying for their GCSEs, and that building resilience and stress training was fantastic. And stress is something that comes up in every organisation I work with. Things about supporting people's work-life balance. If you've got flexible working and that's something your organisation wishes to publish, that's fantastic for people to know that they're being looked after. So that's great for well-being. Physiological support for well-being, things like workstation assessments, eye tests, pregnant new and nursing mothers assessments, supporting people when they return to work. Definitely things along the lines of a stress policy. Many organisations don't have a stress policy because they think if they acknowledge that there's a problem with stress, that it means that they have to do something about it. They're not aware that there's already a problem with stress, and you ignoring it just isn't helping. Definitely, I'm a big fan of wellbeing roadshows, and we ran one for a client in February, which was brought in with the British Heart Foundation. We had British Heart Foundation come in and join us, and we did Heart Month for February. We've just had, for June, we've had Diabetes UK come in during June, and they actually ran a wellbeing roadshow with us. And the other thing I find really good is 5 or 6 times a year, normally about every second month, I actually run a wellbeing campaign within the organisation. So 1 month is on stress. 1 month was on. We had Mental Health Week back in at the end of May. We ran something for Mental Health Week. Another month was on asthma. Another month was on smoking cessation. So things like that I find really, really helpful for wellbeing.
Okay, excellent. Lots of ideas there. And actually, this question has come in, and it's probably a good bit of timing. How do you prevent wellness fatigue? People can get tired with the constant push of the well-being subject. There you go, an interesting question for you, Sarah.
They can get sick of the wellbeing subject, but you know what? I'd much rather people say, "Oh, I hear so much about wellbeing, I'm sick of it," than my organisation doesn't care about me. So there is the time that you've got to think, okay, we can't do everything for people, but if they're only hearing about one campaign, I would never do anything more than once per month.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's 12, all of these people are employees. I guarantee that each employee would complain about 12 different things a year. So if we're looking at giving them proactive information on 12 things a year, that wouldn't need to be a problem. Maybe for this person's organisation there has been too much and they need to cut it down to once every 2 months or once every quarter. But I would definitely rather hear that people are trying to do too much about well-being than not enough.
Okay. What do you think the easiest way to promote well-being in a workforce that's deadline driven? That's always a difficult one, particularly I think with the mental health, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. So I've been doing some work with solicitors lately, and of course they have to account for every 6 minutes of their time. So that's a highly stressful situation. You do get a lot of people who end up with burnout and things like this. Those kinds of things. It's the employee assistance program for a client I was working with last year, actually had a fantastic EAP which offered resources on managing your time effectively, resources on managing stress, resources on upward delegation and downward delegation and sideways delegation, and communication skills and things like that. But it's very difficult when you've got people, that at 5 o'clock every afternoon are really under the cosh because they have to get particular output done by 5:30 every day. And a lot of that is about time management, building resilience and learning to manage stress. And the other thing that actually helps is dealing with management. So you can actually come up and say, this is an unrealistic deadline that's on me. I can't complete this until X day. And doing that far enough in advance that you're not only letting someone know an hour before a deadline that you can't get it done.
Excellent. We've got a question here about, I suppose, really it's sort of benchmarking. Which parameters should be used to measure, trends, so we can compare with other organisations, so we can start a sort of benchmarking system? Any thoughts on that?
In terms of health and safety, there's obviously the HSE puts things out each year for the accident figures, etc., and that at least we have trends which we can analyse. If depending on what industry you're in, I would go and have a look at the industry standards. The Confederation of British Industry releases some very interesting figures every year, so CBI is a good place to start. I would also definitely, HSE's website, CBI's website, and then if there's any standards from your industry that are posted, I would be going and looking at those as a benchmark. And just the other great thing to benchmark is off your own performance year on year. So make sure that you've got really good reporting systems set up so you know month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year how you're actually tracking. Because as much as it's good to know how other people are doing, being able to track how you're doing yourself is of extreme importance.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Right, now I'm afraid this is probably going to be our last question, but we are going to put all the questions to Sarah, so she's going to sort of take some of the questions away, put some answers together, and those will be available on our website too. But a sort of slightly naughty question probably to finish on. Who should lead on wellbeing currently? Currently in this particular organisation, it's the HR department with very little input from health and safety. Should there be should we nominate a professional to take this forward? Your views, please, Sarah.
I love this question. So I have a real issue with HR being the people that take on all of this wellbeing stuff, because HR aren't the people who are learning about the physiological and psychological effects of of work on life and life on work. We are taught this in our degrees when we do health and safety. We're taught what happens when, you know, stress is a health and safety legislated matter. People are going to court on stress. Health and safety in the UK reigns supreme over every other piece of legislation. So why are we having HR professionals who are not necessarily competent taking the lead in wellbeing? The health and safety people must have a direct impact. And the reason I put wellbeing in front of health and safety is because it all starts with wellbeing. Naturally, the area that there is a solid link between HR and H&S is wellbeing. That can be insofar as if someone's coming back from a sickness, or you're dealing with a sickness absence case, you put together a sickness absence or a sickness management conference. And in this case conference, you've got HR, you've got H&S, you've got the line manager. They all discuss things. They can talk about the person's well-being, how it's impacting their health, how long they're going to be off, what we can give them to do when they come back to work, etc. But that all has a direct impact on well-being. HR need to learn from us, and we need to learn from HR. But this, in my opinion, wellbeing should be led by the health and safety people, and we should be educating and informing HR.
Excellent, Sarah. What a good way to finish. Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to let you go, Sarah, and I'm just going to say to everybody else that we're now going to be taking a summer break as normal, and we're going to come back for our webinar series in September. And on September the 16th, actually it's probably quite well linked, is the value of occupational health in business today, and that's going to be by Dr. Les Smith. So I hope you all have a fantastic summer. And I look forward to speaking to you in September. And thank you once again, Sarah, and thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.